Hello and welcome to another episode of OSA TV. It's another segment of our ongoing series, What is a Fish? So let's think of that question for a second. What is a fish? You try and think of one unifying factor that connects all the fish. I guarantee you the first thing most people are going to go to is fish breathe water. Well, these fish don't. Today we're going to be talking about the betas and the gouramis. So this family is called the Ostramoniidae. And we're just going to call them the gouramis because I'm not saying that again. These guys, like the pearl gouramis, these guys break the first rule that most people would think unifies all fish. They do not breathe air. In fact, they don't have traditional gills. They have what's called a labyrinth organ. The labyrinth organ is basically like a fake lung. What it allows the fish to do, the gouramis, the betas, allows it to do what I'm about to do. So these fish have evolved to live in areas of extremely low dissolved oxygen in the water. So as a result, they decide to bypass the system. They just take the oxygen that they need directly from the air, and that's allowed them to live in very hot water and water that's full of organics. That's why beta fish can be in bowls, or at least that was how can they survive for at least a period of time, because they can access that air. Whereas all these tetras require oxygenation from the sponge filter in order to have oxygen in the water. These pearl gouramis can tap oxygen directly from the air itself. And that's pretty rad. So there's a lot of diversity in the gourami family. Most people don't think of betas as gouramis, but they are. We'll do a separate video on betas themselves. Most gouramis stay about this big at the most, so there are several species that are like the dwarf gourami, which are a little bit more applicable towards nanotanks. For the most part, they are not extremely aggressive, though certainly the males of pearl gouramis and blue gouramis can get more aggressive than not. And then some of the species grow to be tremendous in size. There's a few different individuals in this family which are monster fish, like the giant gourami. These guys are farmed in Southeast Asia and they are actually consumed, or they're sport fish. I've caught a couple myself and they put up a heck of a fight. They can occupy a top part of the aquarium that few other fish really use. You can see that most gouramis will always be within the first few inches of the surface, which means they can be very well complemented with other community fish such as tetras that occupy the midground, or corycats that occupy the bottom. But because they do predominantly occupy the surface, I do recommend floating flake feed or smaller floating particulate feeds. And if you really want to get a good color going out of them, I recommend foods from omega-1 and Hikari that have lots of rich omega fatty acids. So a last note on these guys is their different reproductive strategies. Some gouramis lay eggs, but the majority of them are defined by the way that betas reproduce. So they actually will have a male that goes through a very long courtship ritual with the female, produces a bubble nest. The female must be impressed with the bubble nest, and then the male and female will mate, and then the eggs will be fertilized by the male, rise, be trapped in the bubble nest, and then for most species, there is a tremendous amount of parental care that will go into the eggs before and to a lesser degree after they hatch. So the gouramis, not bad parents, air breathers, breaking the first couple rules of what we assume might be a fish, and very common, diverse, hardy, and welcome additions to the freshwater aquarium trade.